Thank you. Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, great. Thanks so much for being here tonight. We are focusing mainly this evening on vibrant aging, as the circular and the flyers and the email blasts had mentioned as the topic. But we will leave some time at the end. This isn't a super lengthy presentation, so we will have time at the end for questions and answers. And also, we can address some other really common and popular kind of hot topics like food intolerances, because I know that's a really, really huge concern for so many people. Now, so let's look at this quote. Maintaining a balance in the processes of digestion, inflammation, circulation, and immune function will help to ensure faster recovery from injury and disease, plus a longer, healthier, happier life. So whether you are getting on in years and concerned with vibrant aging, if you feel like it's more time is of the essence, or even if this is not the case, enzymes still help you maintain that balance in the process of digestion, inflammation, circulation, and immune function. Doesn't say anything about, for older people or for younger people. It's for anyone of all ages that we can maintain this balance. It's critical. We can be preventative in nature with various different measures. So great quote from his book, Enzymes, the Sparks of Life. So now let's take a look at what these enzymes are that Dr. Shikoki speaks of. Enzymes, if you remember back from chemistry class, are defined as catalysts for change. What that means is that without enzymes, none of the biochemical reactions in the body would occur in a fast enough period of time. Enzymes have been also defined as sparks of life, or enzyme activity, or metabolic activity. I like the word chi or prana. Chi is used more in Chinese medicine, prana in Ayurvedic medicine, but it's that energy, that life force that we all contain. And enzymes have been attributed to that life force. We decline in enzymes as we age, and we're going to talk about that eventually. But just know that they are responsible for every biochemical reaction within the body. My favorite example of a metabolic enzyme is that at the tip of the sperm, there's a little sac of enzymes. It's called an acrosome. And within that acrosome are these enzymes that actually digest the egg cell wall so that the sperm's chromosomes can enter the egg and then mix with the ovum's chromosomes so fertilization can occur. And that acrosome also contains enzymes that help speed up the reaction of sealing off the egg wall so that no contaminants can then enter. So it preserves the integrity of that cell. So literally, none of us would be here without these enzymes. So they really deserve a great deal of credit. Also, when we're sleeping, or when we're doing our minimal amounts of activity, sitting, clicking a remote, perhaps blinking and breathing, and that's the extent of that activity for the evening, enzymes are still firing off in every one of your trillions of cells within the body. Estimate 50 trillion cells that we have as humans. Interestingly, I just can't not share this, we have 10 times the amount of bacteria on and in us than we have human cells. So we have 500 trillion bacteria that live on and in us. So we're not at war with them, we need to be in harmony with them, and we'll kind of address that again shortly. Now there are also digestive enzymes. These are the enzymes that break down foods into small enough molecules to pass through the intestinal lining and get into the bloodstream. We cannot exist without the digestive enzymes either, because they're the ones that unlock the nutrition from our food, deliver it from the GI tract, which is a hollow tube, through our body. If we don't unlock the nutrition from that food, it doesn't leave that tube and it doesn't get into any of the other systems of the body. So those digestive enzymes are critical as well. Now, unfortunately, we do decrease in enzymes as we age. But before we switch to the next slide, I did want to point out that Dr. Howell, who wrote the book Enzyme Nutrition, he's a real pioneer of enzyme research in the States in the 1940s and 50s. He had done a lot of research on animals in the wild who were brought into lab settings, switched to cooked processed diets, and noted how their pancreases increased in size and weight about 2 and 3 times due to the strain on the pancreas. So we're kind of walking around like that today, eating little kibble like granola and all the things that are cooked and processed and devoid of enzymes. So it's no wonder that pancreatic cancer, when someone is diagnosed with that, has such a short prognosis, because the pancreas is responsible for the manufacture of so many enzymes. And remember, these enzymes are vital for life. Being capable of exact measurement, they're a yardstick of this vitality. There are many, many diseases that occur due to enzyme deficiencies, and we also use enzymes such as elevated liver enzymes to measure our health. So enzymes, without them, we would not be here. We decline as we age, I was mentioning. When we are, who here is familiar with hormone replacement therapy? Who's ever heard of it? Well, like pretty much everyone. So we know that we decline in hormones as we age. We also decline in fluids as we age. When we're babies, our brain is a much greater percentage of water than it is when we're in our convalescing years. So we decline in hormones, we decline in fluids, we decline in enzymes as we age. There are various situations that contribute to the decline of these enzymes. Of course, just aging by nature, there is a decline. If we eat large amounts of cooked processed foods on a regular basis, we may challenge our body's ability to produce enzymes for other processes. If the enzyme activity is constantly tied up in digestion, it may be shortchanged from fighting free radicals, keeping cancer cells in check, breaking down proteins like viruses, bacteria, etc. So eating large amounts of cooked processed foods may present a challenge to the body and cause us to decline. Extreme athleticism, I don't mean Bikram yoga a couple times a week, but if you're extremely athletic marathon runners, we tear down muscle, we build up muscle. There's catabolic and anabolic processes that keep happening, and it causes a great deal of energy to be spent on the repair of those tissues. Enzyme energy is thus allocated. Extreme climates also causes a decline in enzymes, not where we live in the Northwest, but in extreme climates where the body has to work even harder to maintain 98.6. If your climate in the Antarctic is 30, 50 below zero, your body has to work extra hard by muscle shivering and other body functions to maintain your body temperature. So that can cause the decline of enzymes too. Genetics play a role. Although you don't have to use genetics as a crutch, just because we have the potential to have diabetes or to have a certain disease does not mean that we need to throw caution to the wind and express those genes. They're latent. We don't need to kind of poke the tiger, so to speak. Oops. So we know that we decline in all these fluids, we decline in enzymes as we age as well, and you can see from the Gerontology Geriatric Journal, there is absolutely a decrease in the enzyme activity as we age, and a relationship between enzyme activity loss and protein modification.
Before was repair gold and whatever the other was, so you went by fast time to get it.
Oh, I'm going to go back. We're not going to really spend time on this slide, but the point of this slide is to show you that there are a great deal of enzyme formulas out there because it is so well known that we decline as we age. There's been a great wave in the creation of many new formulas, and this is the fastest growing category within the natural foods industry. At least one of the fastest growing categories is enzymes. So there's many formulas out there. Rather than really be super product focused tonight, I'm with Enzymedica. I've been with them for 11 years, but I really want you to understand the principle behind enzymes and enzyme therapy more than I want to do a product training. It just feels intuitively better for me. So let's really look now at digestion as the foundation of health. It's been said that 85% of all disease begins in the gut. That is a vast, vast percentage. So if 85% of all disease starts in the gut, it goes to show you, even if you aren't experiencing the digestive issues like bloating or gas, etc., you can still use a digestive enzyme to support the preservation of your own enzymes. You can also do things to support your body's health as far as eating more raw foods. 118 degrees of heat destroys enzyme activity. So it's not hard to see how we're all walking around basically with health challenges. If you look at the grocery store shelves, everything except for the meat department and the vegetable department, for the most part, is destroyed of enzymes. The enzymes are denatured. And then when you take those meats home, you cook them, so you kill the enzymes. Now, I'm not saying go ahead and start eating raw pork and chicken, but what I'm saying is when you cook those foods, you destroy those enzymes. So then there's the vegetable department, the saving, shining grace. But we steam our broccoli. 212 degrees is what water boils at. So we're destroying the enzyme activity there. We boil our potatoes, we steam our corn. So we're destroying so much of the enzyme activity that is inherent in foods. We eat very few cultured vegetables as well. Now, you're kind of a microcosm. We are of the macrocosm. We do a lot of kimchi and kefir and sauerkraut and yogurt in our little neck of the woods in our little group here, more likely than not. But as a whole, we really do not eat as many fermented or cultured vegetables as we used to. And those put probiotics into our gut, and guess what they do for us? They make enzymes. So without probiotics, we don't make cellulase, which digests fiber, the wall of Candida. So when we are on antibiotics, if we have no friendly flora because they've been destroyed, they don't make the cellulose that digests the yeast cell wall, so it grows unchecked, and it's easy to see how imbalances can occur. So we need enzymes, we need probiotics as well. When we decrease as we age in saliva, this is impeding the first step of digestion because carbohydrate digestion occurs in the saliva. Do you remember back from chemistry class or way back, whatever biology class it was, where you had to chew the saltine cracker until it tasted sweet? Did anyone ever do that? No? Okay, well, it was something that we did in class. If you take a starch, like a carbohydrate cracker, it's normally kind of salty, but as you break those bonds down, you have to chew it for about a minute. The glucose will be freed up from that starch, and it will start to taste sweet. But no one chews their food for 60 seconds anymore. We're lucky if we even chew more than 7-8 times a bite, and I think it's supposed to be like 24 or 25 times a bite. So saliva is the first stage of digestion for carbohydrates. We decrease in saliva. When we decrease in stomach acid and intrinsic factor, which is something that the stomach cells secrete, that means that we're not going to digest our foods efficiently because HCl starts the chemical breakdown of our food. Back to chewing, if we swallow our food without chewing in large chunks, the chunks get into the stomach, and it's not small enough for our body's HCl and enzymes to work at efficiently. So it needs to send more acid, which may be a contributing factor to heartburn, etc. But it's also contributing to greater stress on the GI tract. The intrinsic factor helps to absorb vitamin B12. So if we're inflamed or irritated, or generally if we have damage to the gut, or even just as we age, we secrete less of that factor, we may set ourselves up for, or we may be set up for anemia, pernicious anemia, etc. And of course enzymes decline as we age, as mentioned. What this looks like as far as symptomology would be gas, bloating, indigestion, heartburn, discomfort. You may even find yourself feeling kind of toxic with headaches, etc. If food sits in the gut, this is an ideal compost heap. It's warm, it's moist, and foods ferment. So if they're not digesting efficiently, your enzymes aren't breaking them down into small enough molecules to leave the gut and get into the other systems of the body, they ferment. So think about carbohydrate like orange juice. If you go on vacation and it's in your fridge and you didn't finish it all, power went out, that container, when you get home, is going to be kind of swollen because of all the gas that's been formed. Also, it's going to, in your body, do the same thing, contribute to gas, bloating, etc. If you think about a steak in your fridge or some meat that you went away and left there and then the power goes out, it's going to be quite putrid in the house. So that's kind of a tip-off as to what you're not digesting well as far as in your own GI tract. if you get my drift there. Deficiencies in vitamins and minerals can occur through the decrease of the saliva and the enzymes and the acid, because we need to break down proteins effectively to deliver minerals. It's known as the mineral transport system. So proteins are bound to your minerals to be delivered. So if you're not breaking down those proteins, you may find yourself with bone density issues, mineral loss, etc. as well. And if you're not digesting components like purines well, they may contribute to situations like arthritis or gout. So many systemic disturbances can occur when digestion is off. And these may look like some of these final symptoms here. We're at increased risk for circulatory issues, for mental acuity, function, bone health, as I mentioned, and in decreased immune function. All of the enzymes that would break down your foods and allow you more raw materials to build more enzymes. When you have low enzymes, you're setting the stage for all of that to be faulty. So this kind of sums up a lot of that. But interestingly, older adults typically cook less, a lot of times eat out more, especially if we're a single person, young or old alike. Sometimes it's difficult to cook for yourself. Many people are uninspired because you have to buy so much food and you have so much left over. So it's pretty common to choose things that are simple to prepare, either pre-prepared. In Europe, they kind of call it the tea and toast diet. When you're feeling sick, you don't feel like cooking, so you're like, just throw another piece of toast in the toaster, maybe some almond butter, nut butter. But over time, eating the same types of foods leaves you with deficiencies as far as nutrients, and it may set you up for food intolerances. A constant bombarding of the same type of food is quite challenging on the body. About that, the more that we eat foods that we're intolerant to. So if someone has a gluten intolerance, does anyone here have gluten intolerance? Raise your hand and keep it up if you do. So just a couple too. And this isn't a judgment, and you're not being graded on this, but do either of you still eat gluten? No? Do you eat still gluten a little?
Occasionally.
That's always what I see. If there's 4 hands that go up and I say, how many eat gluten? 2 go down. And then it's important to know that that is fine. In our world, there needs to be some flexibility. It's really hard to be entirely saintly and angelic every time. But know that if your occasion is like every occasional, like every other day, occasional, no. But for some people, they will say, yeah, occasionally, which is like 3-4 times a week, not every day, but 4 times a week. That may be enough to create low levels of inflammation over the long haul. And when you have what would normally be nice, tight-knit cells in the gut, when there's inflammation, everything swells, and then there's perforations. Now, they're microscopic. They're not as big as my fingers, of course, but foods are spilling from the gut into the blood in large molecular sizes, larger than they should be. And so this is a big problem, because then we may develop antibodies to these substances that are foreign, toxic, and do not belong in the bloodstream like that. So then you're at risk, when you develop antibodies, of a food allergy. I personally developed antibodies to eggs, almonds, and dairy, and when I was pregnant, I ate a ton of those foods thinking I needed to get my protein. But when you're pregnant, you also have increased cell permeability in the gut because your body is trying to get more nutrition in. So I suspect that maybe I bombarded myself with too much of those same types of foods, and now I develop antibodies when I eat those foods. So rotation and moderation are really key. I still eat eggs here and there, just to show you that like I'm saying, no one's really able to avoid all things all the time. Even if you avoid those things at all time, cross-contamination happens, right? So maybe you go out and you order a gluten-free pizza, and it's not a dedicated kitchen, and you come home and you know that something wasn't quite right. You've just ingested gluten. Sometimes people will say that when they go to a store when they're filling the bulk bins, they can't be there on a Wednesday if they fill the bulk bins because they'll get sick. And I remember when I first started working in this industry, I thought, that lady's a little crazy. But it's really not the case. It really is the case that when they inhale the gluten dust from a bag of, wheat, berries or something being dumped into a bin, that dust enters the nasal passage, and the little hairs send it back to the pharynx, and then it goes down the esophagus, and then we just swallowed gluten. So it really is a problem on cross-contamination as well. So with enzymes, not only do they assist you in the digestion of any types of foods you eat, they also have the ability to support you in specific ways. So if you have issues with gluten intolerance, rather than just getting a full spectrum digestive that will handle carbs and fats and proteins, you can get an enzyme that is specific to gluten. Something that's called DPP4 is the enzyme for gluten intolerance. So when you are intolerant to gluten, I'm not saying go ahead and have a whole loaf of white bread and do it every day now that there's an enzyme out there for you. But when you do have a piece of birthday cake or a piece of pizza, for a celebration, etc., rather than experience discomfort or create low levels of ongoing inflammation, you can use those enzymes to minimize the particle size. And when you minimize particle size to 3 amino acids or less, it's actually 5 kilodaltons or smaller, which is about that same size. You minimize or alleviate altogether the negative reaction. Great to know too if you eat out and you're still going to avoid the things that have gluten in them, but someone maybe isn't as on top of things as they thought they were. They've used soy sauce in a stir fry, not thinking about the fact that there's wheat in soy sauce. You can take a digestive enzyme that contains that DPP4 to prevent negative reactions. So digestive enzymes are a fantastic way to preserve your body's enzyme potential, to help support the breakdown and delivery of nutrients. And in Ayurvedic medicine in India, they skip meals 2 days or 2 times once. They'll skip a morning and an afternoon meal in a day once a week, and that's 8 meals a month, and so on and so forth over your lifetime that energy is not allocated toward digestion for. So they feel that puts time on as far as longevity. So using digestive enzymes similarly can rest the digestive tract. It may have similar effect. Calorie restriction, eating smaller portions, is absolutely proven also to extend life in humans. Proven in scientific studies. So just by reducing caloric intake by 20-something% or increasing your exercise by about 12.5% and cutting back calories by about 12.5% to about 25% for total, you have the ability to increase genetic expression of proteins that protect your cells from oxidative stress, from free radical damage, as well as putting years on to the life. So pretty amazing research that has been done on humans with caloric restriction. If caloric restriction sounds not very appealing to you, nor does fasting, then you can always choose more raw foods and enzyme supplements. Oops. No, do not end show. So let's talk now a little bit about inflammation. So we know that it's critical to support digestion. When we do support digestion, we may have less propensity toward other issues, more energy toward fighting free radicals, more energy for fighting candida, more energy for breaking down dead damaged tissue as far as inflammation goes. But let's look at inflammation further. It in and of itself is not a detrimental process. There are benefits to inflammation. Think about a splinter. If you have a foreign body enter your finger and you don't like pins and you don't like scraping yourself to pick it out, and you just think, if I ignore it, it might go away. In many cases, you are right. Because have you ever had a splinter that was pretty mild and maybe you didn't worry about it and it worked its way out? Your body, it might have a little redness there. That redness, that heat, that little bit of inflammation is natural. It's the body's natural defense mechanism. We send immune factors to that site to help to remove that foreign object. Same thing if you twist an ankle. There's dead, damaged tissue there. The first thing you see on the football field is the medics running in and dumping some ice on that region. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but in Chinese medicine, they don't use ice for injuries, they use heat. And the reason is that heat is a natural process. It ramps up our enzyme activity. It's like having a fever. Here in America, we suppress fevers all the time. But Fevers are a natural process. We kind of cook off that which is wrong. We ramp up our own enzyme activity to digest the things that are dead or damaged or don't belong. So Chinese medicine uses heat. Chinese medicine doesn't support all raw food diet. It's too cooling. If you live in a cold, damp environment, it's far too yin to be eating raw food all the time. So that kind of makes, again, a good case for using digestive enzymes when you eat your cooked foods. But back to inflammation, they use heat for inflammation because it is a part of the body's natural process. Now, these inflammatory responses protect us, but over time can become dysregulated or malfunction, and this has severe consequences to the host, which is us. So acute inflammation, a twisted ankle, something that heals within a relatively reasonable period of time, is not a big deal. You can still use enzymes like bromelain and papain that are heat specific, that break down protein to support the removal of that damaged tissue and encourage to get on the healing end. But when that situation is unresolved and becomes long-term, you may be looking at issues like arthritis, fibromyalgia, carpal tunnel, chronic pain, inflammation. This is the type of inflammation that I'm talking about that has gone beyond being acute. It's gone beyond the point where it's being resolved to the chronic space. And so this inflammation, this long-term inflammatory distress, has been discussed as being contributed to degenerative diseases and aging. Now, the inflammation hypothesis of aging supports this molecular basis that the inflammatory process is indeed a contributing factor to aging. And unresolved inflammation is related and implicated in age-related issues. So it's not really a theory anymore. It is accepted in many circles that inflammation is the root of many, many diseases, the majority. With Enzymedica, we have a few formulas that support inflammation, but know that when you're looking for a formula that supports inflammation, bromelain and papain, as you see there, the second two ingredients, are from pineapple and papaya. Now, a lot of people are familiar with papaya enzymes as far as chewing them. They taste really great. But as far as digestion goes, they're proteolytic only, meaning they digest protein only. So if you're chewing papaya for a meal, all you're going to digest is protein. They don't do anything for carbs, fats, or fibers. So it's not a great digestive enzyme. The papaya and the bromelain aren't. But because they're very active in elevated temperatures, and they only digest protein, and they mainly work in an alkaline setting, that makes them ideal to swallow away from meals on an empty stomach for therapeutic purposes. So when they get into your bloodstream, which is alkaline, and they're attracted to that heat, like your twisted ankle, and they digest protein only, they can support you in that area. So look for a formula with bromelain and papain when you're looking for something to support you with acute inflammation. When it's gone beyond acute to the point where it's chronic and you're dealing with long-standing issues that involve pain and inflammation, look into Serratia Peptidase. That third ingredient down, you may have heard it called Serratia Peptidase, is an amazing enzyme. It's one of my personal favorite enzymes. I just get really excited when I talk about Serratia. It is multifunctional in that it breaks down fibrin, which is what makes up blood clots, scar tissue, fibroids, fibrocystic breast tissue, fibromyalgia. It is mucolytic, breaks down mucus, so if you have sinus infections, mucoid plaque in the bowel, candida with a lot of mucus in the stool, it's mucolytic. It's proteolytic, so it breaks down protein. That's the main category that it's under, because mucus is made up of protein and fibrin is made up of protein. But it also digests biofilm. Does anyone know what biofilm is? Biofilm is the medical community refers to it as a slime. It is a substance that bacteria make. Specific bacteria, like many different staph infections, make this bacteria, make this slime, It protects them within this slimy bubble from being detected by the body. So if you know anyone who's been on rounds and rounds of antibiotics for infections like a staph infection, look into Serratia Peptidase. It digests that biofilm. So when you digest that biofilm, those antibiotics can get through it into the infection. So they proliferate the biofilm and allow greater efficacy of your antibiotics. Now, I'm not saying everyone should do antibiotics. You can use proteases to break down things that are dead, damaged, and don't belong as well. But if you already need to be doing these antibiotics, definitely look into Serratia Peptidase if you're not finding that they've been effective for you. Amazing, amazing enzyme, and you can go on PubMed and Medline and see research on its effects for the itises, sinusitis, bursitis, tendinitis, arthritis, any of those chronic itises, inflammation of the Serratia Peptidase is well studied and multifunctional. Amazing, amazing enzyme. So that's pretty much all I'm going to say for these repairing enzymes. Just know that away from meals on an empty stomach, they're a little bit different than the digestives. So you would take them an hour before a meal or 2 hours after, because you're not trying to digest food or protein like a piece of chicken. You're trying to digest damaged muscle, damaged tissue, etc. So away from meals is the best use for those types of therapeutic enzymes. Supporting
juice with them?
You can do juicing and you can take enzymes as well, absolutely. You will get enzymes in your juices by juicing, but those enzymes in the juice are enough to digest the components in the juice. If you've ever heard someone say, oh, I had a steak and I had my salad, so I got my enzymes. And you got enzymes, but you got the enzymes for the salad, because each food in nature has the enzymes for itself. So if you pick an apple, which is living off the tree, it's a living, breathing in its own right organism, and you pluck that, it contains a lot of enzymes. It contains a lot of amylase, a lot of cellulase. Those are the enzymes that digest carbohydrates and fiber, which is what that food contains. If you pick a thing of broccoli from your garden, it contains a lot of cellulase for the cellulose, a lot of amylase for the carbohydrate in that. If you have sushi, that raw fish contains a lot of fat and protein. So it contains a lot of lipase for the lipids to digest those. It contains a lot of proteases to digest the protein. So each food has the enzymes to digest it. It's when we cook it that we destroy those enzymes. So we'll take some questions again shortly at the end. I'll leave plenty of time for that. So when you want to support joint function and a full range of motion, you can use these enzymes. To kind of tie it back to aging, it's really important to get physical activity throughout the day. 30 minutes, 5 days a week is suggested for older Americans. For children, it's an hour each day. So as we age, that need to exercise is considered a little bit less as we age, but still nevertheless very important, because that extra activity requires more caloric intake. And this offers us the opportunity to want to ingest more foods, to feel that hunger, and to increase the opportunity for more nutrient-dense foods that we're ingesting. So exercise is really important because our nutritional needs do not decrease as we age, but generally our caloric intake does. So exercise helps keep caloric intake up. If you're finding that exercise is challenging because of inflammation, using the proteases that are here on this list is really one of your best assets. They don't need to be converted by the liver. They are fast acting. Everyone can benefit from enzymes, all of them, the digestives or therapeutics. There's no threshold of toxicity. They can be used by children, elderly, anyone in between. Now let's talk about the third aspect of vibrant aging, and this is an amazing topic, stem cells. So when we talk about stem cells, I know sometimes people who don't quite understand it, the fur on their back kind of comes up. We're not necessarily talking stem cells from embryos at all. There are two types of stem cells. There are the embryonic stem cells, which do come from embryos. There are also adult stem cells, and these are what we all make, but unfortunately we decline as we age. So interestingly, adult stem cells can divide and differentiate into various different cells. So if you have a nerve cell, your nerve cells can only make more nerve cells. If you have adult stem cells, they can become a nerve cell. or they can become cardiac cells, or they can become new bone. So they're like blank slates, and based upon cues and hormones from the body, messages that are being sent to that cell, what the body needs, and based on internal factors within that cytoplasm of that cell, they can become what the body needs it to be. So adult stem cells are really critical in that they can support us in whatever area we need regeneration. Stem cell therapy is known as regenerative medicine, so you may have heard that term before. There are doctors who actually use and harvest adult stem cells because of their ability to differentiate and support the body. So I believe Dr. Johnson in Spokane will take from your, if I'm not mistaken, like your sacral iliac region. They actually use a needle and they pull out the stem cells, about 30 cc's of like fluid and stem cells, which they then, at least they do this, Dr. Pereira I know does this in Florida. He's the founder of the Institute of Regenerative and Molecular Orthopedics. He does draw that. They centrifuge it, so they isolate just the plasma factors and the stem cells, and then inject them into the area of need. So if you need spine surgery, but you don't want to be cut open and have your discs fused and have metal in your neck, they can get around that for many patients by harvesting your own stem cells and putting them back into the specific area so that you can grow new bone and grow young new bone or grow new tissue in that area. Fascinating, fascinating subject. So these adult stem cells can differentiate and support us in creating new muscle, new brain tissue, new bone marrow, new blood vessels, skeletal muscle, skin, teeth, heart, gut, liver, ovarian, epithelium, and testis tissue. So amazing. They serve as an internal repair system. They divide essentially without limit and go to replenish the area of need. So we decrease as we age. It's critical to do what we can to support ours. Nourishing our own stem cells, there's just a couple of quotes here, and then I'm going to show you some science. By nourishing our own adult stem cells, we help the body's natural ability to repair itself, and that was stated by Cindy Sandberg, who had done research at the University of South Florida. She's a professor there in the neurobiology department. And then Joseph Pereira, who I'd mentioned, Dr. Pereira, is the founder of that institute, and he likens stem cells as to being able to turn the clock back as far as healing is concerned. So I mentioned that I wasn't really going to talk a lot about products, but this really stands to discuss. The University of South Florida, Cindy Sandberg, and many other researchers there tested over 200 natural compounds, and they were looking for these compounds' ability to increase stem cell proliferation or growth. What they found was that a blend that they patented and call NT20 was able to extremely efficiently increase the growth of these adult stem cells in the body. And so we're going to talk about this and look at some science, but the proprietary blend that they tested is blueberries, green tea, carnosine, and vitamin D3. And so we all know blueberries are a superfood. We know green tea is a fantastic thing to ingest, especially when it's high in EGCG. Maybe you've heard of resveratrol. This is also in this. You may or may not have heard of carnosine, but that supports brain tissue. And of course, you've heard of vitamin D3. So let's take a look at what they had seen. Vitamin D3 alone, when they took human stem cells and cultured them in a dish with vitamin D3, the stem cells were able to proliferate about 8% faster than those with no vitamin D3. When they tested carnosine, it proliferated the cells about 10% faster than the control with nothing, with just the stem cells. Green tea was about 14 or so. Blueberry was about 19% increase in stem cell growth. But the combination far exceeds the sum of the parts. So if you add that all up, it's about 20, 35, 45, 50 something thereabout. With the combination of all of those ingredients together and stem cells, nearly 70% increase in the ability to proliferate those stem cells. Now, in addition to that, they took nerve cells, grew them in a culture, and exposed them to free radicals, a free radical hydrogen peroxide. So this hydrogen peroxide we all have in our own systems. Superoxide is one of the free radicals. And when we have these free radicals, they do stimulate in small amounts some beneficial responses in the body. But as we age, we seem to produce more. The superoxide may leak from the mitochondria within our cells, and that is setting us up for more free radical damage. When a free radical is in the body, it's got an unpaired electron, so it's unstable. It's looking for a molecule, an electron that it can steal from our body for its benefit, for its stability. When it does take one of our electrons, that makes that substance less stable, and so it goes to look for one, and it sets a cascade, like a domino effect, of free radical damage within the body. And we know that free radical damage contributes to aging, wrinkles, high cholesterol, the lipid, the oxidation of fats, etc. So it has so many implications in aging and disease. Free radical damage does. What they found was when they tested the nerve cells, ability to thrive. In the presence of H2O2, they found that those cells did not thrive, that 80% of the cells died. But in the presence of the NT20, only 35% died, 65% survived. It almost flip-flopped those numbers. They were protected by the antioxidant, the high ORAC value, and the beneficial substances within blueberries, green tea, carnosine, and D3 enough that they survived that oxidative stress. Peroxide, and found that in the low dose, which is about a tenth of what the high dose was, there was a 20% decrease in stem cell death. But with the high dose, which is equivalent to 2 capsules of the blend that they patented known as Stemicel on the table there was a 40% decrease in cell death. So if you're concerned about your body's ability to fight free radicals, and of course free radicals are everywhere when we eat, when we're exposed to irradiated food, excessive amounts of sun, one of the highest amounts of free radical damage we can get is through X-rays, and in particular the radiography, where they look at you on a constant, not just take a picture, but if anyone's had like a cortisone shot in your neck, they look at you and they take a continual image through the X-ray so that they can watch what they're doing, so they can see the needle go into the bone. That's one of the greatest sources of free radical damage that we're exposed to. And so all of these things, that there's xenobiotics, that's food toxins and chemicals on our that are used in the growth of our crops. Xenoestrogens, you may have heard of those, that mimic our own receptor sites and wreak havoc with our own hormones. Those are all xenobiotics. Those are all considered free radicals and damaging in the body. So overall, the more stem cells, the better. The more stem cells that you have, the more ability that they have to proliferate and create new cells for you and keep regeneration happening. As Dr. Pereira said, the more, the better. He uses these stem cells, these substances that increase your own stem cells in his practice. So there's no stem cells in the product, although there are a lot of stem cells in plant stem cells in facial products these days. You may see them on the shelves in beauty products, but there's no stem cells in these. It's blueberry, green tea, carnosine, D3 that stimulate your own stem cell production. So the more the better, and he finds that in the patients that he gives Stemicel, the patients he gives Stemicel to, with the stem cell injections that they're getting, they heal and regenerate much faster. So it's kind of a two-pronged approach. So no need to give up and throw the towel in and succumb to aging. There are absolutely things you can do to prevent aging. You can support your digestion. If 80% or 85% of disease begins in the gut, support your gut. That's a fantastic way. Get the most out of your food, minimize the amount of energy on digestion so you have more energy for fighting inflammation. But also know that you can choose high proteases, bromelain, papain for acute, Serratia Peptidase for chronic inflammation to help restore the function of tissue and minimize that inflammatory distress. And then also do what you can to support your body's performance through stem cell activity. And then just before we close and open it up for questions and answers, you'll see here that there is a gentleman, Mr. Singh, in the top picture, the guy with the headpiece and the beard, and he's one of the oldest known marathon runners. He's 102, and he just finished his last marathon, I think it was early this past year. So he was the oldest known marathon runner, and he's decided he's not going to hang up his shoes just yet, but he's going to do shorter races now of about 10K, 8 miles instead. So excellent, fantastic.